Tuesday 15th of December 2015. Lucy, can we have SEDERUNT and apologies, please?
Good afternoon. We have 16 members present, and I have apologies from Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Stitt. Councillor McGregor and Councillor Mail are not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you, Lucy. Declarations of interest. Oh, sorry,
Chair,
Ira.
it's just on apologies. Apologies for Councillor McGregor and Councillor... who's the other one? Mail.
Thanks, Ivor.
And Councillor Nicholl. I don't know if he was
And
recorded.
Councillor Nicholl as well. Okay. Declarations of interest, members? None. Minute of the meeting of 27th October 2015. Willie.
Yeah, Chair, before you ask for a correct record, it's not so much on the basis of is it a correct record, but in terms of page 5 of 176, item 13, and it's really seeking clarification on this point. I did write to governance on it and got a reply from yourself to say that the committee, the report was there only to inform. My clarification that I seek is whether the correct procedure was followed in regard to paragraph 56 of the circular Social Work Service Group 5/1996, and I can read you that
I've got it, well, it's okay.
you so wish, but you know,
I've got it.
Okay, yeah, but for other members' information, this is a paragraph that clearly lays out what the procedure
You'll need
should
to,
be.
Willie, because other members don't have it. What I propose to do, that there has been an issue raised by Councillor Scobie of governance in relation to an exempt item. And clearly we can't discuss the content of the exempt item. And there is a procedural matter that's being challenged. So what I propose to do, if members are comfortable with this, I will remove from the agenda the 3 exempt items today. That will save any conflict. I will have a report brought to you at the next Social Work Services meeting outlining policy and procedure in relation to exempt items, especially where there's a financial implication to the Council. Members are happy with that. Just put that to bed and you'll get your solution, Willie, however well that might be. And you appreciate, I know you appreciate, we can't change what's been happening in the past and the procedures that were in place at that time. We can't change the minute. That's a true record of what took place and the basis that it was taken on. And we will bring you a report at the next meeting, and that's an assurance. Yes, Willie.
Yeah, Chair, I hear what you're saying in terms of what you intend doing, and I can see where you're coming from on that, because we do need to follow correct procedure. But in my opinion, at this stage, I don't think the procedure was followed correctly, and I may follow my own actions on that one, notwithstanding what you have just said in terms of bringing forward a report to a future meeting. I'll consider my position.
That's fine, Willie. And if that's the case, I'm sure you'll deal with that with the monitoring officer, and I appreciate your view on that. And thanks very much. Okay, given Willie's observations, it hasn't changed the fact the minute it will be a true record as members happy with that. Thank you for that. In that case, we come to agenda item 4, Social Work Services Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 2015-16 for the period ended 31st October 2015. Angela, will you take us through this report to start with, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The report presents the forecast overall position for the end of the current financial year as a slight overspend of £6,000. This is made up of a projected overspend on the delegated budget of £547,000 and a projected underspend on the part of the budget retained by the Council of £542,000. The major points to note are the pressures caused by the increase in demand for adult services since April, both for older people and younger adults, especially those with learning disability. And that in order to forecast an almost balanced budget at year end, we're proposing at this stage that we provisionally allocate uprating monies provided for both demographic and price increases. Paragraph 3.3 of the report lists the actions that we've put in place to control spend in the remaining months of this year. One of these is to negotiate with our health partners on the allocation of funding provided by Scottish Government to the Health and Social Care Integration Partnership. and Lillian's able to update us on progress that's been made in that regard this week.
Thanks, Angela, and we have an update from Lillian on where we are with that.
I would just like to advise members that we have undertaken negotiation with our colleagues in NHS as we move forward with the shadow year for integration, and we have come to an agreement in terms of the allocation of funds and true partnership working and moving towards full integration, which in our view will mitigate some of the challenges between now and the end of the financial year. I think it's also important to note that in discussion with colleagues from NHS that we have a clear pathway forward to look at the pressures and how we may mitigate these as we move forward. So I think it's important for members to note the positive partnership working and how this has taken forward the pressures that we were facing within our budget.
Thanks for that, Lillian. Members, Ian, Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just refer to the recommendations, in particular 2.2, where it indicates that the 31st October there was no remaining budget capacity to accommodate any further increases in care levels over the remainder of the financial year. Could you give us an indication of what the present position is, given that it's 6 weeks since? And also, I don't know whether it's appropriate to get some kind of report on how they will deal with it, being a needs-led service, that if, you know, the levels of care do increase, how are we going to cope with it?
Hopefully that information Lillian gave us a minute ago will be the solution to that. But Lillian, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yeah, Councillor Dick, that's the areas that we've been in discussion with our colleagues in NHS, and that will mitigate those challenges. And also, if you note at point 3.3 of the report, we've listed some of the areas that we will certainly be looking towards to ensure that we come in at the end of the year with a balanced budget and we continue to provide the levels of care required.
Thanks, Ian. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, on the same topic, and my concern is to 3.2, and I'll have other issues to raise as well in the report, where it says the forecast outcome projection contained in this report is based on the current level of commitment in relation to existing service users receiving care, with no allowance any further net rises. And it does go on to talk about in 3.3 how this is going to be managed, and we've heard from Lillian how you're going to mitigate, hopefully, through closer working with our NHS partners. But it's to that point, no remaining headroom within the SWS budget for any additional pressures. I only heard just within the last week or so, you know, someone talking, or heard someone talking saying, you know, they're faced with a difficulty in terms of care, that they're having to reduce on the care package that they currently provide to existing users, but then there are others coming on who require care packages. And it's that dilemma of having to reduce on the existing, knowing that there are others coming on who will require a care package. Now, we did hear, which was a very useful seminar, and that was for adults and young adults and older adults in facing difficulty, mental health difficulty and so forth. But I think this is throughout the sector, throughout the whole care sector. And it's how do we balance that between those that need it. I think that we need as much of an update in terms of how the care that we are providing is still being met without reducing where it is, you know, there is an assessed needs against some of the issues that are in 3.2 and 3.3. That's my first, and if I could come back on another point, Chair.
I'm sure Lillian will do with that, but we will constantly reassess people's requirements, I'm sure, and we have an assurance that currently, given the arrangement we have with NHS, there is no risk to any client at this stage. But Lillian will respond to that for you, Willie.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Clearly, the reason that we have put the proposals at 3.3 is to ensure that we continue to deliver the care that is required, and we're confident with these provisions in place and the work that's ongoing with our colleagues in NHS, then we will meet the needs.
You want to come back, Willie?
Yeah, Chair, I hear what's being said, and I appreciate the difficulty that staff are under in trying to deliver what is indeed an increase in, Ian Dick referred to, a needs-led service, but, you know, there is an increase, and, you know, I fail to see how we're going to do it, and it's almost as if, yeah, there's not a concern in here, we're going to deliver what's needed. I just don't know how we can do it. However, I've nothing before us to say that it can only the word of the officers, but I am concerned about the level of service from what I casually heard in terms of the services that we are, where they're cutting back on care, or staff are being asked to cut back on care and still having to deliver the same level to others that are coming on, that are new referrals. That's my serious concern. Because if I turn to what's in the report, you know, on page 9, and it's something that continually comes up at Health and Safety Committee, and this is to the staff, the level of absenteeism, and it's in a further bit of the agenda today, ongoing review of vacant posts and recruitment only to the posts that are essential to service delivery. And we have a high level of absenteeism through stress and so forth. And I just wonder how you square the circle on many of these issues.
Staff recruitment is always an issue. Well, in social work services, the most difficult occupation for anybody to enter, and I'm quite sure that we will do all we can to ensure we support staff through any problems they have and recruit where necessary. Lillian, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely accept, Councillor Scobie, that we have a significant challenge in terms of our absentee record, but we again are setting some new processes in place to offer additional support to staff within social work services by the very nature of the profession. It is a stressful profession, and we've been undertaking some work with colleagues in human resources to have some additional support in place, and we will be taking forward some new initiatives to support staff.
Thanks for that, Willie.
My last point, Chair, is 317, non-delegated budgets, and there's reference to it, and I know it's coming up again as an item of business today, and that's on the kinship care savings is forecast to be achieved in full this financial year. And I do note in this one that reaffirming that the plan for the review of kinship care placements is continuing. My understanding that the report and from what was announced by the SNP Scottish Government is that we do now recognise kinship carers, both those with looked after children and with residency order. And I would like to think we would go further, but however, I'll deal with that in another item of business. But it's to this that the savings as is forecast, it's clearly that there is going to be difficulty in meeting the demand that's going to be put on us with the announcement. And I just asked the question, however, you know, in terms of the forecast savings on kinship carers, other than is it the case that we're going to be continually reviewing to try and exclude on eligibility?
We were asked by members to carry out a review. We set criteria and we have a policy that requires us to do that. And if that policy is applied, I presume we would achieve the savings. Yes or no would be fine. Are we going to achieve the savings we predict in that particular area of work?
We are anticipating so.
Thank you. Hey, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. It's 3.3, 7th bullet point down. I'm hoping that this is not a threat under ARC closure. Could you give us more clarity exactly what is meant by that particular statement? The review of learning disability community support services in conjunction with the wider learning disability review, which takes into account ARC staffing. What is meant?
Lillian, or is it Graham? Graham, would you like to come forward, please?
That's quite straightforward, Councillor Wood. We've been looking to review our learning disability services full stop since I came into post. So we hope that will come to fruition at some point this year.
But under the review, what is it you're actually looking to achieve through your review? You must have an objective.
my objective is to run a 21st century service for people with learning disabilities in Dumfries and Galloway.
Can we just mind we're working through the chair here, gentlemen, just before you go for the third time, Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you reminded me because I was getting carried away, I confess. But it's such an important factor, as you're very much aware, within our own ward, and I wouldn't like to think that we're going to lose such a provision. And if we are, what would be the alternative, or do you not have a vision at this stage for that?
Graham, I take it we're not carrying out a review on ARCs with a view to closure or restructuring ARCs per se, are we?
Absolutely not.
Thank you, thanks for that. Okay. With no other members then, Ian?
Just a brief one, I'll ask it now, it's maybe more relevant for item 8, is in regards to the first item that we spoke about, the pressures, the financial pressures that's got to come on us with the demand-led service. Just the strategic plan, and I think it's picked up on, it's probably got to refer to it, I think it's paragraph 3.9, I think, and item 8, so we'll not go there at the moment, Chair, but just there's 7 bullet points in particular, and do we feel strong enough even at this case, it may be better to answer the question later on, that and as far as the strategy that we're looking at through Health and Social Care Partnership, that addresses some of these potential pressures, and it puts the workforce in the right places.
I think it'll have to, Ian, because that's what the Scottish Government have instructed us to do, and that's what we'll have to do. And this year, you know, and I'm sure everybody knows, any overspend on the social work budget in relation to IJB, Council will fund it, and vice versa, of course. But you can come back again in item 8 if you want to marry it to this particular item, Ian. But we will absolutely have to achieve what we've set out to achieve. Okay then, members, if you're happy with that, can we go to the recommendations? 2.1, note that based on the position at the end of October 2015, social work services are forecasting an overspend of 6k against the 2015-16 agreed budget. Note the increase in the level of care provided over the 7 months to 31st of October 2015, and that there is no remaining budget capacity to accommodate any further increases in care levels over the remaining financial year, notwithstanding the information received from Lillian in relation to conversations had with NHS. Note that provisional budget environments have been applied as reflected in Appendix 4, allocating the upratings provided to social work with a further report being presented to the March 2016 Social Work Committee, confirming the need for the application and seeking members' approval. Note that the report provides a summary of the services and associated budget to be retained by the Council and services transferred to the Integrated Joint Board. And for the delegated budget, note that based on the position as at the end of October 2015, delegated budgets are forecasting an overspend of 547k against the 2015-16 agreed budget. Note the progress against the delivery of the agreed savings applied to the social work services budget is reflected in Appendix 2. And note the update in respect of the policy development budgets which were provided to social work services as reflected in Appendix 3. For the non-delegated budget, note that based on the position as at the end of October 2015, non-delegated budgets are forecasting an underspend of 542k against the 2015-16 agreed budget. Note the progress against the delivery of the agreed savings applied to the social work services budget as reflected in Appendix 2. And note the update in respect of the policy development budgets which were provided to social work services as reflected in Appendix 3. Thanks for that, members. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. That report has basically presented 10 recommendations for noting. Now, I'm just making that as an observation, but I would invite you to sort of maybe comment on whether or not we should be asked to scrutinise or anything else other than note. I feel beyond sort of looking at it and saying, aye, we've seen it. What's the purpose of 10 recommendations to do that in terms of what we're meant to be doing as elected members?
You're quite right. We used to always get we were always challenged when we were asked to note something. But I think you've had the opportunity today and in the past couple of weeks and through the year to scrutinise, because the other information's here, and the object of the exercise for the last 20 minutes was to scrutinise what elements you wanted to, and then note the position thereafter. So if you want the wording different, that's not a problem. But at the end of the day, we still have to note, and we can change it to agree if you want, that the budget position. Some of them you're making a specific decision, whereas in this case you've been given financial information that's factually correct, or as correct as we could make it for October 2015, and that's why it's presented as a note rather than agree. But happy to have the wording changed if it would give members comfort. It'll not change the position we're in, which is why in this case it's a note situation. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. In that case, we go to item 5. Item 5 is kinship care, and I'll ask Liz if there's anything to add to Liz Bell. Would you like to come forward, please? And anything to add to the report or any further information you want to present to members before we go to discussion?
Report, and would happy to take questions.
Liz. Members? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. I think it's good to see this report here. I mean, 3.2 pretty much states why we had to do what we did, and I think we fully expected this. Can I just make one observation? I'm pleased to see that the Council's providing benefit maximisation. Quite clearly, there has been situations, if I read it correctly, where kinship carers would have been eligible for state benefits through DWP, and it's only right that we actually give the professional care which can assist with that. Can I just ask a couple of questions? So, can you just clarify that we're now reached the position, and Scottish Government COSLA through this review, I've reached the position of parity between foster and kinship carers. And could I also ask what the position is with kids in kinship care between the ages of 16 to 18? Is that the same as foster care? Because I'm not quite clear on that.
Liz?
I'll take the last question first. In terms of young people aged 16 to 18, if they continue to meet the eligibility criteria, i.e. they're still subject to children's hearings provision, then they are eligible for kinship allowances within the revised scheme. In terms of so parity with fostering allowances, if the report is approved and we move forward and that is agreed by the committee, then that's what we move to pay. Okay.
Thanks, Liz. Ivor?
Chair, it's under 3.4. I know primarily most of the people that have failed eligibility criteria have been because they're not part of the court system, children's hearing arrangement. But what are the other reasons? If that's just primarily, that means that a secondary one as well, possibly a tertiary one as well. It's just, what were those? That's the sort of first one. And just under 317, the kinship carers will be subject to a regular review within the child's plan. Is that on a par with foster carers? Is that what foster care and families have already?
In respect to your first question, I'll ask either Liz or Lillian to answer, provided it doesn't allow anyone to identify what a particular child is. And then I'll come to the second question. Liz, can you do that, please?
Yes, I can. The eligibility criteria didn't only look at the legal status of the child or young person, it looked as in terms of their age or whether it was a kinship placement made without social work involvement, social work placing the children. So there was a range of different criteria. The further in the report at 3.5, the eligibility criteria is set out, and that's what we have assessed all existing kinship arrangements against and any new ones coming forward. Second part.
It was 317, Liz.
317. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Oh, Lillian will do it.
Yeah, the reviews will be undertaken as is with current foster placements.
Apologies for that. Lost my train of thought.
Thanks, Liz. I've got Willie and then Jeff.
Yeah, Chair, and some of the points have been touched on. Obviously, the kinship carers are concerned. Can I return to 3.4, Chair, where it is recognised, or the figure is some 31 kinship arrangements have not met the eligible criteria. Can I ask if it's been fully scrutinised, this one? Because any child who does not remain with their biological parent or parents, then my understanding is there's a section 25 where it's either voluntary, the arrangements are entered into voluntarily. So, you know, there must be something somewhere that says that this child is now residing with whoever that relative may be, as is indicated here. And it was one that we recognised under comparable needs before we changed in December 2014. So there must, in my opinion, be something that can be found where there has been Section 25 apply to the child. And in that respect, Chair, of the 31 arrangements that neither have a looked after child status or a residency order, then given that that person is still a kinship carer by virtue that they've got a child of a relative child, then should we not be looking at applying or assisting in applying for a residency order so that they are covered by the legislation or the guidance from that's coming out from the Scottish Government under the Children's Act of 2015. That's what, if I could come back to you.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about by virtue of, but I think we've set a policy, and the policy decision is quite clear and outlines exactly when we accept individuals or children as qualifying. But I'll ask Lillian or a list to deal with the specifics of that, Willie.
Okay. We recognise that for some families there is an impact in applying the eligibility criteria, and there may be changes in some arrangements. We have offered advice and support to families who would seek to secure a Section 11 residency order, and we would look at a case-by-case basis if it was possible to offer any assistance to obtain that.
Do you want to come back, Willie?
Yeah, Chair, and I recognise that in the procedures that we have been provided with, or at least I have been provided with, and it's to these 31 without identifying anyone, then we were paying that, and we have been paying that, and still are. Some, I believe, may have got notice that it's going to stop, but I think that we should be looking in the files or wherever to look for that Section 25 that would give us an indication that is the case for any of those 25, rather than just saying that they don't meet the eligibility. I'm seeking to scrutinise, Chair, that particular point under the Section 25.
Well, we're not going to labour it today, Willie, because there's a process. Lillian will respond to it, because clearly there's been a reason why we have identified these 31 children, and she'll give you that, and then you can pursue that in another forum if you're not satisfied with the response.
Councillor Scobie, can assure you that the full reviews have been undertaken on the 31 identified kinship care arrangements which did not meet the eligibility criteria. If within that review process there was a requirement for a residency order, then we would be offering the support to do that. I can give you that assurance. And we have reviewed every case. There were some situations where kinship care was not an entitlement.
You're going to that point, Willie, because I've got Jeff wanting to come in.
A couple more points, Chair, if you don't mind. I'm grateful for the clarification from Lillian, and it's difficult when I don't know who the 31 are, but nevertheless I'll pursue that once Lillian gives me that information. Can I turn to 3.17? And it's really that we've got the SNP government making the announcement that kinship carers will be treated with parity. We've got 32 local authorities. Many in fact, almost I would be safe to say none of them have followed the same procedure in terms of how they assess and the eligibility and everything. What we do know is that it's those with looked after children status status and residency order. However, given the numbers and the detail that we were provided with today, breaking it up area by area, and I'll come to it when it comes to the recommendation. Given the procedure we've got, and that 32 authorities don't do the same, I think we need to look at our procedure, and I would hope that we would set up a review body, including kinship carers, to look at this so that we can work through what is indeed complex issues in terms of the procedure, that we can set up as a committee a review body to look at our procedures to make sure that they are robust and that they do meet the requirements of the kinship carers, so that we can go with total clarity in terms of how we are approaching kinship carer, given the announcement and the parity. Can I ask a further question, Chair, in terms of the payments? And I think it was asked of Liz. Foster carers have been seemingly operate on a basis of 56 payments. And if we're moving to parity with foster carers, will this, if that is the case, will this be afforded to kinship carers in terms of that parity? 56 payments. I believe there's extra Christmas and holiday times.
If I take your first point, Willie, there is a professional assessment panel set up for that specific purpose, and I don't think we're in a position as a council to set up a panel that includes members of the public, but I'll leave that to members to determine, and I'll ask Liz to respond to the 56 weekend, and I might come back to Lillian with the professional assessment panel response. Liz?
The advice from Scottish Government and COSLA announcement was that we seek parity, as you say, with fostering allowances. It did not go further and ask that we seek to pay in the same conditions and terms as we do with foster care. That within kinship care that we make the financial parity for the allowance, not that we pay additional allowances or not. We have met the requirements laid down by Scottish Government and COSLA agreement, and that we are moving to, if agreed by committee, we are moving to parity with the allowances. We have not calculated or taken into account further payments as identified by yourself, Councillor Scobie, but we have sought to meet what's required of us in terms of the allowances.
And Lillian, if you could just touch on the professional assessment panel.
Clearly, the kinship care process was reviewed, and the policy was implemented and revised November 2015. Clearly, we still await further guidance from the Scottish Government with regards to Section 11, and professionally, these procedures and processes will be reviewed on a regular basis, and it is a professional assessment in terms of kinship care allocation.
Thanks for that, Lillian. I've got Jeff, and then I've got Ian Dick, and then Jane Maitland. Jeff?
Thanks, Chair. It's paragraph 3.12, the announcement from the Scottish Government. It says the calculation of the award for each local authority was not measured on the number of children within kinship care arrangements or the allowances currently paid. In that case, what was the basis for calculating the award, particularly given we were left with a shortfall of 179,000 this year and 250,000 last year? So if we have that information, at least to hear what it is. If we haven't, did we query it?
Thanks for that, Jeff. Lillian?
Thank you. Our use of comparable need has presented us with this position where the Scottish Government criteria, if you have a look at 3.5, it's very clear and very clearly set out. We had kinship carers on an allowance in terms of compatible need that did not meet that criteria, and the Scottish Government, in conjunction with COSLA, have set the eligibility criteria and will only fund us for those kinship carers that fit into their criteria and eligibility. Consequently, we have a shortfall currently.
Thanks, Jeff. Ian?
Yeah, just to clarify again, where somebody is no longer eligible, and as you've outlined, the purpose of putting our benefits maximisation people in it is to assess whether in fact they're eligible for other benefits. So in other words, it doesn't necessarily mean that some form of payments are going to stop, that it's just been coming from the wrong place. DWP maybe ought to have been paying some benefits that previously they weren't. So just to be absolutely clear about that.
I think that's right, Ian. I think Lillian explained it very well before. We just gave the kinship carers money and that took them out of the eligibility criteria, whereas now we work with them, see what they qualify for, and then we provide the difference to make up to the something they got in any case. But maybe Lillian can explain that better than me.
Yeah, Councillor Dick absolutely can confirm that we have used the information in terms of assisting kinship carers to maximise their benefits. The benefit is being paid from another source, i.e. DWP. For some kinship carers, the comparable foster carer allowance is less than we've currently been paying for kinship care. So consequently, we've been assisting them to make sure they maximise their benefits. We also discovered some circumstances where the biological parents were still claiming benefit and were not passing that to kinship carers. Consequently, we needed to work with our kinship carers to ensure that they weren't giving false information to the DWP when they were making claims on welfare benefits as well as receiving kinship care. So it was a whole host and a whole range of maximisation of benefit and ensuring that the benefits paid from the correct source.
Thanks, Ian. Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. How do we make certain that emergency arrangements don't drift along and that we actually make the move to permanent arrangements?
Lillian?
The purpose of having the 6-monthly review is to absolutely ensure that we're on track. We accept that we had a delay in setting up the initial kinship care panels for the new process, and that was due to ensuring that the correct professional staff were fully trained and to ensure the correct outcome for the children and young people. So our view will be that if we regularly review, as we've now set in place, then those temporary arrangements should be that, and we will make the long-term permanency planning for children.
As a supplementary to Jane's question, do we require people to notify us of their personal circumstances should they change?
They should notify us, but clearly if we're reviewing, we'll have that information.
Okay, Jane.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously it's in the best interest of the child that the thing is absolutely sorted out and squared up, but I'm just thinking about, you know, where something doesn't happen and things drift on. I'm really just wanting to know, how would we automatically recognise that something had gone on for too long? What is the system, the process, which would trigger a recognition of that?
Lillian?
Well, 6 months seems a long time. When you're planning long-term for a child, that's actually quite a short period of time. So while circumstances may change within that 6 months, we would be confident that now with the robust reviews taking place twice a year, with the interaction, if for example, a child was going for permanency, then the social worker would be working through that process between reviews. So it wouldn't be that we wouldn't be active during review periods, but for those circumstances that change, the maximum time of change would be 6 months. But I would hope that that would be exceptional rather than regular, because social workers will be involved in taking forward the long-term plans for children.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, with that, members, can we go to the recommendation? Oh, sorry, Ian.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm on your blind side, I think, today, but I just think, I mean, it's been covered really, but the only thing I'd like to emphasise is when we get to recommendation 2.2, and it relates to Appendix 2, and I'm thinking maybe paragraph 3.12 that Jeff touched on first. I didn't think MD's got to touch on it, but the financial implications to the council. There's a new policy, we see that, and we haven't addressed it anywhere within the recommendations. That just be a pressure that we have to look at. And I wonder if it's worth the chairman of this committee writing to the Scottish Government and asking Ken Dent, just describing the fact we have got that pressure because of the new policy. We do want to adhere to it clearly, but the Scottish Government should be funding that in full. If it's coming in the back of there, certainly it's aspirational to us, and we would agree with it, but they should be funding that in full and not putting that type of financial pressure on the Dumfries and Galloway Council.
Members are happy with that. I'd be comfortable. Willie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it's on that point. I was going to leave it till the recommendations under a 2.4, and while, yes, I would agree to your writing, I think that there is a need here for a lobby group to lobby the Scottish Government on the shortfall, not only in this year, but the following year, and not just, and I'm sure you'll write an eloquent letter to the Scottish Minister responsible, but, I think we should be lobbying, and also on the clarity under Section 11 and those with comparable needs, as is contained in 3.14. So I would be hoping that we cover it by a lobby group, not only a letter, but a lobby group going to the Parliament to put our case that we do require the extra funding in terms of the number of kinship carers that we got. I think it has been grossly underestimated how many are in Scotland. And on that basis, I would hope we would do that under a recommendation of 2.4 that I'm happy to move, a lobby group, and it's also to deal with the shortfall and the Section 11 and those with comparable needs.
I wouldn't want this to become overly complicated. We have a policy in terms of lobbying, and we don't individualise committees decide when not to lobby. That's a process that's applied through full council, and I'm happy if somebody takes that to full council as a request. I'm happy to write to the Scottish Government in terms of the funding, and if Section 11 has an influence, I'm happy to do that as well. I'll take government's advice on that and send an appropriate correspondence at the earliest opportunity. You want to come back, Willie?
Yeah, Chair, I hear what you're saying in terms of that we have got a strategy in terms of lobbying, and the question has been asked whether indeed that strategy has been put into practice. I would hope that this committee could put it, rather than an individual or individuals taking it to full council, that this forms the basis of taking it to full council, that that's a decision of the committee to go forward and take that as a recommendation to the full council, to say that we feel that there is a lobby requirement here, given the shortfall.
Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. I mean, I think Willie makes a good strong point there. If you cast your mind back a few years when the Housing Committee set up a lobbying working group that went to Scottish Government, it was cross-party, led by the Chair, so in this case I would imagine it would be led by yourself as well, Chairman. I mean, I'd be happy to support Will in regards to that cross-party working group to lobby the government on this particular point. I mean, and my point was particularly about the financial pressure it puts on Dumfries and Galloway Council. Willie's is a particular point in regards to the comparable needs part of that. But I mean, I think led by yourself, Chair, I think it would be a good thing for the council, and it would put us in the strongest position we could in regards to potentially bringing in more money for this cause.
I just don't think we've authority for that, Ian, anymore, given that it's a corporate approach we take in lobbying. That was agreed at full council. I've got Jane and then Ian Dick.
Well, I don't know where we've got to, but we all went up and lobbied in the good old days when there was some money sloshing around, and frankly, we got absolutely nowhere. So I consider this to be a total waste of time, and I am not prepared to put my name to asking officers and members to trade up and down to lobby on this particular issue. So I don't know what people want to do about it, but I won't be supporting this.
Ian Dick.
I'm quite happy for any lobbying on the subject that follows the agreed process and policy. I too was a member of that delegation that spoke to the then Children's Minister Adam Ingram, and I actually quite agree with Jane in that respect. But that's why we formed the lobbying policy, and that's what we follow. And I'm quite happy with that.
Okay, well, we are where we are. We've had a suggestion that we write in respect of funding for kinship care. There was a mention of a Section 11, is that right, Willie? Or looked after children or comparable needs. But the problem is, if we complicate matters too much, we'll not get a response, at least we'll not get a satisfactory response. And we're still, Lillian's reminded me, in any case, we're still waiting for guidance, so there isn't any point at this stage because you don't know what the guidance might say. So probably the simplest mechanism is to challenge the government on the shortfall and see where we go. And I would be happy. I mean, if members want, there is an opportunity for any member to bring forward a proposal to committee. There's an opportunity to us to go to full council and say we would like this particular item to be lobbied on. But you've now got a view that that might not be appropriate because council has a policy, and it's how we apply that and how we go through the mechanism. Ivor.
Chair, I maybe picked this up wrong, but the funding that we got from the Scottish Government, does that cover their criteria or the criteria plus the comparable needs? Because if we are not following the criteria they set, they're going to just turn around and say, sorry, but we funded you in full, you've chosen to go and do more. And that would worry me.
Okay, Lillian, can you confirm the situation in respect to the question Ivor asked?
Councillor Hislop, assertion is absolutely correct. It is the Scottish Government's criteria for which we have been funded. For the areas that we awarded comparable need, we have not been funded. That was a previous historical policy of Dumfries and Galloway Council.
Right, in that case, I'm going to bring this to a conclusion. It would appear that we are being funded to a level that fits exactly what the Scottish Government say, and that should be the end of the matter, will it?
Yeah, Chair, it's not, and the report bears this out because we're waiting on clarity from the Scottish Government under the Section 11. Can I say the change that Jane, or there has been change to the time that Jane refers to now, that we've got an active national body who has lobbied the Scottish Government under the Kinship Alliance Group, and perhaps this is why the huge change has brought about, and it is my understanding that they will be lobbying the Scottish Government and the Minister in early February time. So it does tie in that there has been change. So as I say, I was waiting to come and adding it to a 2.4, and I'm happy to do that in terms of us as a committee to take it to the council as part of its strategic lobbying policy and process, so that they can agree to set up a cross-party, and it comes with weight of the social work. Individuals can do it, but I prefer that it come from the committee, and for the committee to hopefully support that and need be vote on it.
Right, I'm going to go to the recommendations, and when I come to 2.4, I'll ask you, but it's no a consensus, so I'll have to offer members the option whether or not they want to follow that last proposal or no. So we'll go to the recommendations. 2.1, Willie.
Yeah, on 2.1, rather than what's down before us, can I move? Members are asked to note and agree to the set-up of a review body to revise kinship care policy and procedures in accordance with the Scottish Government and COSLA's kinship care settlements, as in Appendix 1, and to include kinship carers as part of that review body.
Now, who are you asking to do that?
To set up a review body, this committee.
We don't have the capacity to include members of the public in any committee we set up, Willie.
That's what I'm asking this committee we can do, and we have done in other areas. It's a review body, it's just a working group, Chair. I'm just moving that.
Okay, have you got a seconder? In that case, there's no seconder, so we'll go to the recommendations. Members are asked to note the revised kinship care policy and procedure in accordance with Scottish Government and COSLA kinship care settlements, Appendix 1. Note the financial implications of the kinship allowance scheme in relation to the requirement for parity with fostering allowances paid within Dumfries and Galloway, Appendix 2, and the amended eligibility and assessment requirements of financial support to provide targeted support to vulnerable children through continuing care within their community and kinship relationships. That concludes the recommendations. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, and to add a 2.4, and this is to set up, to ask the full council to set up a cross-party lobby group to lobby the Scottish Government on the shortfall as identified in 3.12, and also to include clarity of Section 11 and those with comparable needs.
That we simply agree the recommendations as they stand.
Oh, sorry. Provided the motion is competent, can you read out the motion again and the amendment, please, and we'll go to the vote.
I have a motion proposed by Councillor Scobie and seconded by Councillor Ian Crothers that the committee go to full council and request that a cross-party lobby group is set up to lobby the shortfall identified in 2.1. And the amendment made by Councillor Maitland and seconded by Councillor Thompson is simply to agree the recommendations as they stand.
We'll get it, Willie, if your motion is successful.
Councillor Dempster,
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson,
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie,
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Crothers,
Motion.
Councillor Karen Crothers,
Motion.
Councillor Ian Dick,
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop,
Motion.
Councillor Lever,
Amendment.
Councillor McKee,
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland,
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie,
Motion.
Councillor Syme, Councillor Tate,
Amendment.
Councillor Stephen Thompson,
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield,
Motion.
Councillor Wood,
Amendment.
and I can confirm that the amendment carries with 11 votes to 5, and that is to simply agree the recommendations as they stand.
Thanks for that, Lucy. We come to item 6, Director's 6-month assessment of business plan performance, social work services 2015-16. Angela, can you just take us through this report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The report presents social work performance over the 6-month period from April to September 2015. Our performance against 5 out of the 23 performance indicators and 16 projects in the social work business plan is below target and contained within Appendix 2, which is the exceptions report. I need to point out that the Health and Safety Action Plan for social work is actually Appendix 3 and not 2, so apologies for that error. With regard to the Health and Safety Action Plan, there is one social work services health and safety matter that's overdue and showing as red. That's the reviewing of management arrangements. And there's one that is behind schedule showing as amber, which is departmental procedures for planning and managing the health and safety aspects of projects. Appendix 4 also sets out suggested changes to performance reporting that has been raised by the last series of area committees and therefore consideration by Social Work Committee today. We're happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Angela. Councillor McKee.
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's a hardy annual for me. 2.1 on page 55. Percentage of children on a child protection register for more than 36 weeks. The impression I always get by that comment is that you're wanting to get these kids off that register as quickly as you can. But I didn't necessarily feel that the assurance is there, that the support is going to be there for these same youngsters, albeit it probably is, but it's just the way it's worded. And the other thing was, I had to jump forward there because the chairman shouted at me. Page 67, could he ensure that that is printed in a larger size, please? People are laughing because they think I'm the only one that's complaining, but the ones that's laughing loudest are the ones that complained loudest, but they didn't want to admit it.
Happy with that, Councillor McKee. Both points have been dealt with. We'll do with the small writing, and I don't think Lily needs to comment further. We'll deal with it. Thanks, Councillor McKee. Any other members? Ian Carruthers?
Thanks, Chairman. I'm on your blind side again. Just, I mean, firstly, praise. Ken, we should quite rightly praise the good work that's going on here, and I'll touch on just some of the red indicators just to try and get an understanding. So just 2 or 3 questions, Chairman. Page 63 of the report is the percentage of days lost per employee through sickness absence. And if you go across to the next page, on page 64, it says the percentage of staff who haven't completed an annual performance development review. The 2 years with the personal development reviews down, sickness is up. If you see that as an indicator, is there a correlation there, is or no? And I think what went through my mind was, have we actually got an organisation where we have succession planning, I suppose, at the heart of our policies and how we drive forward, and also similar for the employees that have the ambition and the drive, as opposed to somewhere a career path that they can actually meet their fulfilments. Again, have they actually? That was one part. The next part was on the next page, 65. The improvement action plan. I couldn't really understand what that meant. I wonder if could maybe got kind of layman's perspective. Maybe that's just my simple mind. I didn't understand what that meant, William. The next page was on page 66, and an improvement action plan against that. I just wondered, was our kinship care policy having an impact on that? If it was it good, was it bad, was it indifferent? That's it, Jim. Thanks.
3, thanks, Ian. I'll get Lillian just to quickly deal with that, if you don't mind.
In terms of the absence within the service, we absolutely accept that we need to offer additional support to staff to have them return to work, and have a wraparound service from the minute someone reports his absence. And I indicated earlier that we're putting some new measures in which will become operational in January, which will offer a significant amount of support to those members of staff who particularly are off work with stress-related illnesses. In terms of the professional development, we absolutely accept that that is an area where we're working with our managers to ensure that professional development plans are completed. We have a new training strategy, which again I'm happy to bring back to members, and I'm confident that with the completion of the PDRs, and I would hope to be able to report an upward trend, and linked into our professional training development and plan, then we will start to see a significant increase in terms of meeting the training demands for social work staff. We are currently experiencing a significant amount of national agenda in terms of changes in legislation and requirement for new risk assessment tools. So we're having to build all of that into our training plan, and we're doing a significant amount of work to make sure that we provide staff with that access that currently they require. In terms of the 2% increase, that is talking about the completion of the professional development plans for staff in terms of the improvement action. I know that you felt you didn't quite understand that, but that's what that's in relation to. I don't believe that the new kinship care policy has had any impact at all on the child protection registration. Again, really to tie into Councillor McKee's comments, we need to actually have a look at what that target means and how you evaluate it. Having children on the register and an increase is not necessarily a negative, but we are looking at how we can better report to committee with a more robust suite of quality indicators in terms of childcare issues.
Thanks, Ian. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, it's turning to the exceptional reports, particularly in 2 aspects of these. One is on page 63, and this is the level of absenteeism. And it's been well debated and fought out in terms of social work, and not just social work, but social work being, I think, one of the highest, if not one of the highest, in terms of absent rate. And it's around the stress, and I referred earlier to in an earlier report. And it's looking at this, and when, I know in here it's talking about action plans and taking it, it's really just to when are we going to come to grips with this in terms of stress factor, and ask there's anything to do with caseload and the continued caseload and not enough financial resources to meet the need and demand. That would be my first point. So really asking when are we going to come to grips with the absenteeism and the level of stress that people are off with. And again in page 65 of the exceptional report, and this is around communication and the elected members' inquiry service. And I think it's as far back, and maybe Lillian can recall, I think I'm saying August 2014 when I met with Lillian. And this is one of the areas that Lillian said she was going to look at and improve. And from the figures here that are before us and the statistics, there's not much improvement. When can we expect this to improve in terms of communication to elected members' inquiries?
In terms of the first question, I think it was dealt with just a second or two ago. Well, members do suffer stress consistently, especially in this profession, and we recognise that. And Lillian said there is a support mechanism will work well with staff to try and ensure they're supported through any issues they have. And we'll not can predict how that will improve other than we will long-term working with them and ensuring they get the support they deserve. The second part, I'll refer to Lillian for you.
Thank you for that point, Councillor Scobie. Absolutely accept that we need to be more robust in responding to requests via elected members on the EMES system. I think whilst the figures reflect a 35.71% value, the numbers that come through the EMES are very small, so consequently, if we do have a delay in response, then the percentage is such that it will be difficult for us to meet the target, but absolutely accept that we need to improve on that.
Yeah, and I accept what Lillian's saying, you need to improve, but when can we expect to see a marked improvement? Because, we could be saying this in a year's time, as indeed I refer to the meeting I had with Lillian, and that was one of the areas. And a year on and longer, then that's still the same, notwithstanding what in terms of what Lillian's remarks has been to EMIS. It's the fact that elected members, there's somebody that's waiting on a response, and when can we see a marked improvement on this?
The only thing I can say, well, as Lily's given you assurance that it'll be improved upon in the next report, will be when you can measure it against this one, because it's 6 monthly, and she has said she'll improve on it, so we'll have to.
You're saying the next report we should see a marked improvement?
No, so that's when you may. That's the next time you will see a report on the EME services, 6 monthly report. That's what it is. This report outlines where we are, and you've now been given an assurance that we will improve on the responses to EMES, and you can measure that when you get the next report in 6 months' time.
Chair, could I perhaps add to that, if that's all right?
Be my guest, Angela.
Thank you. It's just to point out that it's not immediately obvious in the report that this measures a response within 3 days. And for social work services, some of the complaint areas and inquiries are substantial and complex and may take longer than 3 days, and that impacts on the length of time that we need to resolve those.
Can that maybe be reflected in the report then? Because we don't want it appearing as if members of staff are no responding. In actual fact, they are. They just need time to find out the specific information that's required. So if somehow that can be broken down so that you deal with the thing within 3 days, and then you provide the response at whatever time it takes to get that type of information collated and passed to the elected member, that would be better than saying we're just failing. Well, we're not going to have a conference about it.
No, there's no dispute here. It's 3 days and 15 days. So it's 3 days to say why it's going to take 15. And then a substantive reply by 15. Accept the point that's been made by Angela.
Be done with. Okay. Right. Andrew and then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. When we're compiling these reports, they're quite siloed. It's all about our own authority. Is there any way of getting comparator figures to some of them? I know that we'll not be compatible with a lot of other local authorities, but some of them we must be. I feel it would be quite helpful if we could get some comparators just to see how we are performing with others.
As long as it doesn't involve an extensive piece of work, Andrew, I'm sure Lillian will accommodate you. Lillian?
We do have access to comparable authorities, so we could have a look at what's available and bring a proposal to committee.
Thanks, Andrew. Ian?
Actually, just a quick one. It's the very last page, 69, with Appendix 4, and we had a really healthy debate in Arndale and Eskdale, to say the least. It's the last point I was just got to pick up on, which is at 4.8 within the Arndale and Eskdale box. It's the work previously carried out through the community payback improvement. It goes on to say that some word in there about kind of environment and countrywide services, countryside services. Sorry. Just it was a regional aspect we're actually picking up in there, not just Arndale and Eskdale. I just wanted to make that clear. It was because it's happening all over, and I think Lillian's more than aware of the situation behind that. So I just wanted to point that out here, that was absolutely a regional thing Arndale and Eskdale was picking up on, even though it was Arndale and Eskdale where it was picked up.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for that. Okay. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's on the same appendix, Appendix 4, and obviously there's a couple proposed responses there where it's Social Work Committee to consider, which kind of leaves it hanging, because is this us considering it now for these inclusion in future reports? And do we need to agree that they should be included as indicators, or that those works should be rolled out, for example, across the region, or Annandale and Eskdale as it may be? So it's just to get a wee bit of clarity from yourself about what we're agreeing today when we go to the recommendations.
Well, I'll be happy to do that. So the members want to discuss it today. But the trouble with this is we don't want to be setting out a scheme now based on Annandale and Eskdale to be rolled out through the region if the community payback team are involved in other aspects of work in other areas. And we're not here to deal specifically with regional or localised stuff. So it's a complicated one. And I know you said region, but that just introduces a debate on Annandale and Eskdale because that's where it came from.
It wasn't Annandale, it was in there that all four there, two area committees obviously haven't responded. Wigton have responded to it on one issue. My understanding on that question that Stephen just raised is that would come kind of after the new financial year. That would be picked up usually about April, May time through the committee structure. Kind of report would come back and saying this is what the area committees across the year have emphasised in regards to the business plans and the performance indicators, and this is how they may or may not, will or will not be adjusted accordingly. So usually that's where they're picked up. I know it's been specific. I've actually wrote when in that same box as well in regards to when that report would come forward. But I imagine if it's there, it'll come forward at some point in the future.
According to Lillian, area committees asked to bring it. So it should go back to area committees, will it?
We were requested to bring this to... Sorry, Chair, we were requested to bring this to Social Work Committee for consideration.
But it is performance reporting. It's not committing staff to do a particular piece of work. It's area committee performance reporting request. So it's reporting on performance. So you can get a report on the performance on 6 months. What you can't do is decide what community payback staff are going to do in Annandale and Eskdale or anywhere else. Good. Richard and then Stephen.
Yeah, I think the process is that area committees give their proposals we're always reviewing our KPIs to make them smart, so I think the committee can decide which ones are relevant to the whole region and should apply across the whole region. Remember, I don't know if you want to go through them one by one and just see if they're relevant.
There's only two that have been referred to the Social Work Committee for consideration, and remembering that it's performance we're reporting on, what committee will be asked to do is, do you want a performance report on that item? And if you do, then you'll get it in 6 months' time. And the two items are a more quantitative approach to be taken involving service user satisfaction levels to record data on self-directed support payments. If you want that, you'll get a report on that in 6 months' time. And the other one is what previously carried out through community payback to improve country environment to be continued and extended. Well, we can't do that within an ideal list deal because what we're doing is we're doing performance reporting. We're not asking staff to go out and instruct community payback on anybody else to carry out pieces of work.
Yeah, I think the qualitative one is, I think, one we could ask for a further report on, because obviously other services survey their customers to see how satisfied they're with progress. I noticed there that we listen to user groups. It says in one of the indicators we listen to user groups and we act on their feedback. It's looks after people, so they'll be extending it to across the service. We could have a report on that one, that would be good.
Lillian's happy to do that. Richard just said she'll do that for you. So that will be presented in 6 months' time. Okay. Members are happy, then we'll go to the recommendations. Recommendation, members are asked to review the 6-month summary of performance for social work services set out Appendix 1. Review the overall summary of performance for the Department Health and Safety Action Plan for the 6-month period April to September 2015 as set in Appendix 2. Andrew?
Can we ask to add into that and to bring forward comparable figures from other authorities within Scotland where possible?
Only related to health and safety. Specifically related to health and safety matters. Because that's what this part says. 2.2 specifically on health and safety action plan. So we'll leave that. We'll give you an extra place at the bottom, Andrew. So 2.2, review the overall summary of performance for the Department Health and Safety Action Plan for the next 6-month period, for the 6-month period, April to September 2015, as set in Appendix 2. Scrutinise the exception reporting in Appendix 3 and consider whether the actions proposed are adequate to improve performance and future monitoring of areas which have not met the target, and recognise areas of good practice, high performance where the target has been exceeded, and provide comparable council areas for a consideration within that report, or what's that effect? That be all right, Andrew?
Yes, thank you.
And review the request to Social Work Services Committee in Appendix 4 from the autumn 2015 Area Committee of Business in relation to performance report. And we've already agreed for Richard that we will bring forward a report on the specific one, which is a more qualitative approach to be taken involving service user satisfaction level to record data on self-directed support payments. I've got Richard and
I think it's more on the first part, which is the qualitative thing, which involving our service users.
And involves service users, okay. Stephen?
Yeah, it's just to embellish on that, and it might assist officers bringing back the report, but it was particularly relating to the fact that in an integrated world we'll have service users maybe not necessarily using our services, but using a partner's service, and how do we capture that information, because it's going to involve other partners, not just our own measuring tools.
Possibly through the IJB, but we'll do that, Stephen. We'll try and do as much as we can to accommodate you. Okay, members happy with that? I'm just getting Lucy to write down the particular section. Then we'll go on to agenda item 7. Agenda item 7, Dunmuir Park Progress Report. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of this report is really just to bring members up to date about where we are. In particular, can I just draw your attention to 3.3, 3.4 and 3.5 in terms of the external scrutiny around about PricewaterhouseCoopers that had been requested, that's now been done. It appeared before another committee, and they wished it to be brought here, which is why it's here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members have any questions, or are you happy with the content of the report? Jane and then Willie.
Were we going to receive an update? Yes, from the a verbal update.
Oh, the
by officers.
registration status.
On the care inspectorate, yeah. With registration status.
If it will
exactly.
help, I can either get this photocopied for members or I can simply read it. One of the representatives of the three families was kind enough to include me, deliberately obviously, but include me in a correspondence he received from Bill Duncan at careinspectorate.com. It was sent on the 15th of December at 10:32, so I got it this morning. And I note your email today, this is a response from Bill Duncan. In one of your emails and in the linked web-based article, there is a reference to Dunmuir Park being a care home. I thought I had addressed this issue with sufficient clarity, but for the avoidance of doubt, let me state clearly again that Dunmuir Park is not a care home. That issue has, I feel, now been sufficiently clarified. You might wish to consider, for the sake of accuracy, removing reference to that from your web article, as what you've written does not reflect the contents of my email to you. And that was an email from the Care Inspectorate to the representative of the families, and he was again kind enough to include that correspondence to me, and it was fairly comprehensive and dealt with many of the issues that were raised. There are still outstanding matters, but clearly, in respect of the discussion, debate about a care home, the Care Inspectorate has deemed that it is not a care home in their view. And as I say, that gentleman was kind enough to provide me with that today. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, and I'm grateful for you bringing forward information from emails. I too was copied into the same email that you just have referred to, and I think there is a lot of issues that are unclear from the issues that have been raised with the particular person that you refer to. And in particular to 3.3, where it is, in my opinion, unclear in terms of the occupancy agreement and whether it is care at home or a care home service that's being provided. And it's,
Well, we're not going into that. And can I just tell you one
say,
thing?
I'm
No,
coming to
Willie,
the point,
no,
Chair.
Willie, stop.
Okay.
Tell you one thing before we go any further, and this has been made clear by Lillian, and it's not been placed in the public domain. If, for whatever reason, we deem that place, Dunmuir Park, to be a care home, we will be obliged with legislation to reassess every person who currently resides there and determine their occupancy need. And it may be, and the words are inverted commas, may be, that some people do not fit the requirement for a care home. And as a consequence of that, we may have to find alternative accommodation for them. Now, that's no anything, it's no a threat, it's a statement of fact that we will be obliged to do that if this becomes a care home. But we have a definitive statement from the Care Inspectorate, a man called Bill Duncan, that in his view, and he's conveyed that information, as I say, the gentleman was kind enough to tell me, Care Inspectorate did not consider it to be a care home. We never set it up as a care home, and that's not how we propose to run the facility. So that debate today is finished.
Can I continue, Chair? Thank you. And again, grateful for the information that you provide, so be it by statement. I'm sure that the families will be delighted to hear that. What I'm saying is, and I still remain unclear in terms of, indeed in 3.3, you will see that the council's opinion was sought on it, and they have given their opinion. So there is still the issue around occupancy agreement in terms of the assessed needs and those assessed needs being delivered. Your statement today has clarified that it may require further assessment of individuals who have been in situ for almost 2 years.
We're not going there, Willie. This is nonsense. Either come to the point or I'll move on to the next speaker. I'm not prepared to get into an argument about a status of a premise. It's quite clear. And there are other avenues to explore if you or others are not happy with how this committee determines the process and where we are today in terms of registration with that premise. I'm not going there today, Willie.
Can I continue, Chair?
Provided it's no on that matter.
I'm moving now and I've made my position clear on that. Can we turn to 3.4 of the report? And as one who sits on the Audit and Risk Management Committee, there was a caveat attached to that where the external auditor's report was to be referred back to social work for scrutiny, and the caveat to it was, if necessary, it would then be referred to full council for further attention. And that's not in the 3.4, because there was issue that was unclear in terms of the land value. Sorry?
Are you referring to the audit and risk?
As to what was agreed at audit and risk. It's not.
It's nothing to do with us audit and risk. We don't take instructions for audit and risk. If they want to send a report to full committee, they do. If they want someone to come to this committee, they make a request for that to happen. That hasn't happened to date. No, with me. Is it with you? That request hasn't arrived yet. And we're certainly not taking instruction for audit and risk committee, will we?
Thank you, Chair. Can I continue? I'm merely making the point there that 3.4 is not fulsome in terms of audit and risk agreed. We're here with a report from the external auditor and the power, the POW. So that is an important part in terms of land value. So it may require to go to full council. In terms of the position of the legal position in terms of the power of attorney and the guardianship, I think that there is no clarity in that one. And I come back to the point I've made in the past. This is not going to go away, and you've referred to some of the issues in one email. A number of us have received a good number of emails, and all 47 have received.
What point are you trying to make?
The point I'm making, Chair, is that I've made the point here. This is not going to go away, and I'm going to hold and be consistent that I think what we need to do is move away from perhaps normal procedure and set up a body that is able to look at this and review it. I'm happy to move again, Chair.
Fine. You've got a proposal to set up a body to review. Do you have a seconder for that? No. In that case, that's not happening. Any other speaker? In that case, we'll go to the Jane and then Stephen.
Chairman, it's really about the nub of this particular issue, and it is at 3.4. It's about what the external auditors, review, and actually, it's a very slim review. Actually, it really doesn't tell us very much, I don't think. I do think that in these times that we're dealing with at the moment, I think we need to look very carefully at everything that has arisen from the whole Dunmuir Park issue. I think we're looking already at how we treat older people and people with physical disabilities and learning disabilities. I think it's something that we should simply feed in to the work that we are going to be coming forward and doing. And I think that will be helpful for all members to understand the issues and use this as an example. So I'm hoping that we will do that. As far as the value for money, I mean, I do think that the value for money assessment that the PwC have produced, which is simply saying in entering into the lease agreement, the council did not prepare a formal value for money assessment, and that taking into consideration the development, presumably meaning the capital cost, and the nominal rent payable, that the arrangement does represent value for money for the council. I find all this really, I suppose, quite slender, actually, in terms of us being able to follow the public pound. While I have to note what has been said by the external auditors here, I would say that from my own point of view, and really thinking about whether this was the best way and what we actually did, this is a historical review of what has happened, and that's what we've been asked to look at. I would question, possibly, was this absolutely a really good way of working when we are going to, we're looking at the rent that we pay, and the fact that it remains in DGHP's ownership after 20 years. We've got to think whether that is actually really good value for us. And I think we should not shy away from doing that.
No, you're right, Jane, absolutely right. I think it's been said in the past that in terms of the welfare of the residents, it's been tremendous value for money. I think Graham's often said that. But if you'd like to address both the points, Graham, please. Well, you don't necessarily value for money, that's not for today. But the first point that Jane raised, and you're right, it's a historic look at things, and probably we wouldn't do the same thing again without far more intense scrutiny on the arrangement. And I don't think there's anybody here now that was involved in the process in any case. But Graham, can you deal with the first point Jane raised? What was it, Jane, again?
About the review. I think
the review.
I mean, I think that's a very valuable view on things. I think certainly Dunmuir Park is one of our flagship learning disability resources. I think that if you put aside all of the historical stuff around about all the stuff that's in the PwC stuff, and you just simply look at it as a resource that is costing us an amount of money, are we getting the best value for money from that? Are the people that call their home, are they getting the best service that they could do? Is it a model that we think is the best way forward for Dumfries and Galloway? I can probably answer the question to that now is yes, it is. People with that profound level of disability should have the same opportunities for independence as the rest of us. And it's just about the context that's put in. I think there's a couple of things, Chair, if I can just stray a little bit, if that's okay. One of the bits that Council have been clear to tell us is that we have to separate out occupancy from who supplies the care. We've had that confirmed again fairly recently. That was one of the things that the Care Inspectorate spoke to us about. The proposed occupancy agreement is currently with DGHP and their legal teams, who have to do a fairly extensive set of checks with their partners within this development before we can actually get it back, have a final look at it and then get it to families. So that separates out the accommodation bit from the support bit, because I think as part of the review, certainly we would not be doing the same as we've done in Dunmuir Park as we've done elsewhere. So for example, at Beeswing, Lorburn are the owners and the landlords. We have nomination rights into that, and then we commission, we put it to tender in terms of who supplies the support at Beeswing. In this particular case, as is raised in 3.9, at the time of the move, and before that, what was negotiated was that the staff at the old Dunmuir Park would move and provide the support in the new development. That in itself has not been without its challenges, and that continues to be what challenges probably more than anything else. Because when we come back down to the welfare of the individuals that call their home, that is the biggest challenge. It's not actually about the noise that goes in about what's gone on in the past. It's actually about how do we best meet 10 people who have very, very, very complex needs in the best way that we possibly can.
Thanks, Jane. You want to come back?
Yes, simply to say that yeah, I think that's been very helpful. I think that's what we need to keep focused on. Just absolutely how we provide services for people who have particular levels of need, and how we learn from this as we go forward. I think it would be fair to say that we bent over backwards in a particular set of circumstances, and going forward we should use that information, what we know about, if we do that, and take that forward to inform how we go forward in the future.
I think that's right, and I'm grateful for that, Jane. I think the intervention of the families, if you like, has forced a tremendous amount of scrutiny on the establishment and the service, and that should come out as a benefit at the end of the day, and certainly a learning process for all of us. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, nothing really much further to add. I mean, I think in terms of the actual review that's attached as an appendix, I think if anything, my only comment would be about what seemed like a kind of very narrow scope for the review in terms of the breadth of issues that have been raised over the Dunmuir Park issue, if you like. The only other thing would be on 3.11, it's just really the, I noticed in the sort of qualifying narrative there, it seems to be saying at first glance that with the fact that the external auditor has certified the council's housing benefit expenditure without qualification, in one reading of that, it just seems like, well, that's why we can be sure it's okay. So, but I don't take great comfort from that, because I just think, well, who is it that determines whether or not we are, or Dunmuir Park is where it says it is? Obviously, you've read out the correspondence you received earlier, but I don't know whether we should seek the views of DWP or the external auditor or the care inspectorate or indeed ourselves, and determine whether or not something is a care home and entitled to housing benefit. So I'm just curious what to make of that particular qualification.
I think that there's been, you'll know, Stephen, comprehensive examination over time, and there is a whole plethora of information that individual members can seek from our service if they want to rehash what information has been provided in the past. But Graham, can you just deal with that particular question, please?
Certainly. The external auditors of PwC, they are the council's external auditors. They've come in and reviewed the housing benefit payments for here. Because the families had raised the issue of fraud, as following normal procedure, that's been reported to the DWP. So it's already in that reporting system.
Just to come back on that, so I take it naturally as a matter of course, we'll get whatever the outcome of that, whatever comes back from DWP in terms of that correspondence.
Yes. In that case, we go to the recommendation, members. Members are asked to note the progress made in addressing the recommendations made in the independent review that was first reported to members in February 2015. Note the contents of the external audit report on certain aspects of Dunmuir Park as appendix. Agree to receive a verbal update following a meeting with the care inspectorate in relation to clarity of the registration status of Dunmuir Park and the recent inspection held in November. Note the status of the police investigation into complaints received from legal representatives of these service users at Dunmuir Park. Note the outcome from the external auditor's review of the housing benefit subsidy claim for 2014-15, and agree to receive a further report on conclusion of all outstanding areas previously raised involving Dunmuir Park. And that, I presume, will be a fairly comprehensive report when it comes to members. Can we now go to item 8, draft strategic plan for health and social care integration. Graham's doing this. Do you have anything to add, Graham?
No, I've nothing to add, but either I can answer any questions that members have. The only bit that I would particularly draw people's attention to is section 3.9, where we've asked you to whether or not you wish to consider following areas to comment on in part 1 and part 2. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. And I'm sure members are very familiar with this document. It's been in a number of places for consultation. Stephen?
Okay, I don't think I'd put my hand up, but I do have a question. Yeah, it was just on, Councillor Dix actually left the meeting now, but he did ask me to ensure that the locality plan for Wigtonshire recognises the distances from the main centre of health and care provision in Dumfries, not only from the main town of Stranraer, but the relatively remote areas of Mull, Rins and Mid Galloway. Sure, but just on the back of that as well, it's really just to ensure that that's reflected in the locality plan in terms of resources. But on the back of that as well, in terms of the regional picture, I think that it should really reflect that every single area has its own unique geographical circumstances that would pertain to that area. So I think it should be not only for the Wigton area, but it should be recognised uniquely for each area. Thank you. And I'll supply a copy of the written statement.
Thanks for that, Stephen. And I'm sure we do that. Well, that's the intention is to even rural urban differences in a certain locality, that there is a proposal to address these specific issues and ensure there's shared resource and investment throughout the whole region. That's the purpose of the strategic plan. Most of us have seen the document. Anybody want to add anything? David McKee?
No, I've been asked to ask a question, Chair. What measures are being, it's regarding page 97, number of people predicted to have dementia across D&G. What measures are being taken to meet predicted demand for people who may have dementia, care at home, EMI and nursing?
Graham?
The strategic plan wouldn't cover that in that kind of detail. I mean, there are bits about how we will go about doing things. That specifically, this is a high-level strategic plan. The how we will do it will be managed further down.
Will that be divided in by area?
Yeah, it'll be in the locality plans, Councillor McKee.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that, Joe. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if there's been any lessons learned from the consultation process that took place. I mean, within the NISA area committee that had their meeting in Traqueer, there was only 3 members of the public were there. I've heard of other area committee meetings have had similar experiences. And I know that you're going to be going into consultation on the second draft. Do you think that you'll be approaching it from a different sort of perspective?
Remember that this is a draft plan for the integrated joint board. It's no big Graham will be doing it, but the joint board, it'll be for the board to determine how that's done, and then it'll be disseminated to staff. So I would say that's right, but it'll be still to be determined. But Graham will advise as much.
This is the second draft. So the learning from the first draft was exactly what you've come up with. Colleagues sitting over there and myself and various other people spent many an hour twiddling our thumbs, maybe talking to 1 or 2 people who you might be described as the usual suspects. From that, the plan for the second draft was far more focused about actually going and actually targeting specific groups who we knew were meeting, specific individuals, set some wider profile just by doing things differently. Some of the public meetings have not been as well attended, some of them have been better attended. So that's what's informed what you see before you. The draft, all the feedback from the second round of consultation will form the final draft. So yes, people have we have learned from first draft to second draft, which is what you see before.
Andrew?
Am I right in saying that this is also a live document? It will change as we go forward, and what will be the process in that people will be able to use to ensure that those changes go forward?
It's not a live document per se. There's been an online consultation for it. Once the Integrated Joint Board, full council, full NHS board have written off, that's the strategic plan for 3 years. The 4 plans that sit underneath that, the locality plans, will be reviewed on an ongoing annual basis, the yearly basis. That's the point where we can actually start to get some changes in. That's where the scrutiny will be measured against.
And that's if we approve it today, Andrew. I've got Roberta and then Ian Curran.
Thank you. I'm aware this is a strategic document. I'm not trying to bring something in that's not actually contained briefly in some parts of this document. There is an issue in the West regarding provisions for people with dementia, and I'm talking about severe dementia. For many years, I'm just going to fill in a little bit of background here, if you will allow me. For many years, we've had care homes, and then we all became privatised. We had a small residential unit which the health board provided for people with dementia, which over the last 2 years has been run down until there's actually no use made by the health board at all, which has raised a significant issue regarding what's going to happen in our region. It's logical to assume that because we've got an aging population and we have a policy to care for people at home, that the people going into care homes will be much older, much frailer, and a higher incidence with dementia. the issue has arisen, and I've discussed it with various people, that the care homes are, it's a 1:8 ratio in a care home with frail elderly people, a 1:4 with dementia. And I wonder, by the use of the word beefing up, the clinician that attended gave quite a brief scenario, but he talked about beefing up all the care homes in our areas, which in actual fact, obviously, is going to increase the cost, which we have to try and keep down. So I don't know where we go from here, except the health board is quite determined on their route that people with severe dementia will go into homes, care homes. The beefing up comes from whom? I have no idea. But I think it is an issue that people should actually talk about.
Graham won't respond in terms of locality about the West because that's not why we're here today. And the chap on your right will be able to influence that because he's on the IJB, because that's where eventually these responsibilities will lie. But in terms of dementia in a regional context, can you respond to that?
It's difficult to in a regional context without flipping back in. So I apologise, Chair, if I slip back into the locality context. There is a dementia strategy. The Council were fully cited on the NHS's plans about their new EMI strategy, which is the one that you talk about. There is something called the Ideas Team, which is a multi-agency team that we're involved in as well, which is a fantastic thing that has just come back up on stream, fully staffed, that will support care homes, care at home providers, etc., with more training round about that particular subject, where the whole notion is about being able to care for people with more profound dementia in their home communities for as long as possible. So in terms of how we go about doing that, the rates for care homes, you're saying about we have to watch costs, the rates for care homes are governed by something called the National Care Home Contract. So that's, that at the minute is governed locally, so it's governed nationally. All of our current providers have signed up to that as our council. In terms of the new EMI strategy for the NHS, it sees a significant investment in the community because they've been able to reconfigure some of their what was older residential provision, some of their commissioned residential provision, so that they're able to free up resource to go into the community.
Thanks, Graham.
Born back. There is a separate issue, Graham, and I understand and accept everything that you've said, but into the equation has come the creep that we will be turning our care homes into nursing homes. And you say everybody's fully signed up. I can tell you that the population of elderly people are not signed up because if you go into, if you have care at home for as long as you possibly can, then it's free at source. If you go into a care home, you have to pay. If you're in a health board property, it's free. And this has become a really big issue.
Thanks for that, Roberta. Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Page 83, I think it was page 82 and 83 for me. Just said it was regarding 3.8. Thought that reflected well. And one particular point in page 83 was, I know it was touched on in Andy and Esther, was getting the right support for people at the right time, including the provision for respite care. We just felt that was very important, and it would have positive effects on health benefits for the wider public and possibly the public purse in Andy and Esther in particular. But see, when it comes to 3.9, you've got part 1 and part 2. I mean, when it comes to the recommendations, how will we actually incorporate them? Because I think that it's very important that they are reflected. Again, this is a draft. It'll be amended again before it comes back to the IGB. I think it's already been touched on. Just get that clarity, Chairman. Part 1 and part 2 of 3.9. How do you incorporate that into the final draft plan?
Graham?
I think depending upon the committee, this decision, we will feed that back into the group of people who will be doing the redraft of the report. Oh, sorry, doing the redraft of the plan. because they've got, this will literally be the last opportunity for anybody to make comment about in this round of consultation. So whatever, you know, is decided either in here as a body or what people are saying it's been written down at the minute will form the basis for consideration within the final plan.
Thanks, Shane. So 2.4 in the recommendation will cover it.
Thanks, Ian. I've got Stephen and then Jane.
Yes, just going on from what Councillor Carruthers was saying. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just heard Jane. Stephen, do you want to go on? Thank you very much. What I was going to say is that I went to a reablement conference in the college where it was clear to me that there was a real, you know, up and atom aspect of staff there. But what came really through, actually, was arguably that we haven't communicated this message of reablement, help in homes, doing things for yourself, responsibility. And I don't know whether strategically we have absolutely got that right. Because just in the same way as some areas didn't have very many people poll up and talk about this, which is about the most important thing that would have happened in this sort of side of services in the last 10 years. I mean, it really will be. This is massive. This is really going to have a real effect on how we deliver services. I don't think the world out there really understands. And I think we've got to get the message about taking responsibility of your own health out to people. Possibly it's difficult to get it out to the older generation who are still sure that people will come and provide care. And that's actually not always the case. So I think we've got to beef up our own commitment to reablement as the committee. I think we need to say that very clearly, that that's what we think is the only way that we are going to actually spread the jam thin enough to make certain we are able to look after people as best we can, because we require their help. And I don't know that that's absolutely clear enough in this document. The other thing that somebody was talking about, yes, what is the issue about the 10 million increase in expenditure in acute and diagnostics as opposed to a deduction in primary and community care budget? Is that actually something that we should comment on, ask about in light of reablement?
Two things. First of all, on reablement, when this committee endorsed reablement as the overarching sort of principle for our care at home, this draft was already in existence. So that's certainly been fed back as an issue that needs to be put more front and centre in terms of reablement. In terms of the 10 million, that is there simply because it's in Annex 2 and it's been pointed out on a number of occasions. But why are we trying to do this as a real disconnect between the principle about trying to move from institutional care into care nearer the home and community? So on the front face of it, it looks in Annex 2 that spending on acute services will go up by £10 million. At the same point when actually the savings, the spending on community services are actually coming down. That's one of the benefits of the scheme, however, because in our scheme, unlike anywhere else in Scotland, all of acute services are actually in. But so many people have actually, that's the one that people have commented more to me than on just about anything else. Why, when we're trying to do that, does it say this?
Thank you for that, Chairman. I do see what you mean. So about the right, okay, well, we have to explain that then, I think, probably. In terms of the communication issue, I would go further and just add in, I think it's incredibly important that this document makes it quite clear that we expect people to be able to scrutinise and to drill down and to find out what is being spent where. And I don't know whether we have made that one of the things which we really feel we must open up and be transparent. Because people out there do not understand really how the system works. I mean, when we came along and said to one of the community councils who didn't really understand what was happening, said, well, I mean, supposing you were interested in what was being prescribed. You'd like to know how prescriptions and what was being prescribed in one area compared with another GP practice with same sort of characteristics. And they said, yes, we would like to know that sort of information. That's the sort of way we want to get into it. So I think strategically we should be pointing out that these services should be becoming more transparent to the public. And I hope strategically that that's something that we take really seriously, that people can get in there and ask.
I think your first point, well made. If you mention IGB, folk really have no clue what you're talking about. And it, as you say, it was the most significant thing happening in the region in 10 years. And apathy, I don't know why, some quarters engagement. I think it's because we're not going to do it. I don't think it's because we're engaged to how we do that. No, in respect of
Certainly under the proposals in terms of the requirement to give assurance to the IGB on the spend and the performance, there will be a whole new range of performance indicators and quality assurance information provided to the IGB through the clinical and care governance arrangement. And those very points will be at the discretion of the IGB if you use the example of prescribing.
Thanks. Stephen, last word.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I'm not going to say anything much different from Councillor Maitland, but I think just to re-emphasise, I think the re-ablement and care at home seems to be the perennial challenge in terms of the likes of page 99, just that visual indication there of the number of unnecessary days due to delayed discharge, which has, a massive impact on all the services, I think, or the costs, and just even on the people involved, because they can't plan, because they can't get home, and their families are affected, so just the personal aspect of that. So I think we really should emphasise that the re-ablement is a core philosophy in promoting independence where possible and support where needed. And similarly, in the actual paper it does talk about this 10 million acute spend that seems to be coming out of the independent sort of at-home spend or community spend. But you've given the information, or at least provided comfort that that's the feedback that's been received, rather than necessarily something that we should take a particular decision on today. So beyond that, I think everything else has been said by the members here already.
Thanks, Stephen. Ian?
I just thought maybe somebody else would have picked up on it. The only other bit I think is really important, it's already been touched on, but it's important that I suppose ourselves as IGB members should make sure it's in the plan. That's encouraging individuals to lead healthy lifestyles. I mean, that again, preventative, the public plus the benefits to the person's emotional, physical state in later life. It's hard to actually bring that to demonstrate how much that actually, how important that is, but nobody else is.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Note the draft strategic plan for health and social care integration appendix. Note the other draft documents contained within the strategic framework, including draft locality plans. Note that the draft strategic plan has been subject to wide public consultation, including all area committees, paragraph 3.7. And review and agree the proposed response to the consultation on behalf of the Council's interest for consideration by the Integrated Joint Board, IGB, noting that it is the IGB's intention to submit the final draft plan to full Council, Dumfries and Galloway NHS Board, and the third and independent sectors for consideration and endorsement before the IGB agrees the final plan at its meeting on the 17th of March 2016, paragraph. Okay, members are happy with that, thank you. Go to item 9, which is for noting Dumfries and Galloway Older People's Consultative Group. Any other business? I have one piece of correspondence, and it came to me on Friday, and it's really for members to decide whether or no they want to endorse it. I realise you don't have it. The question is, do you want it? It's the Scottish Government consultation on draft order to revise the procedures for complaints about social work and Dumfries and Galloway Council's response. And the Council has sent a response This came to Lillian. Maybe you'd like to explain to members how and why this particular document came about and why we got it just on Friday. The response should be in yesterday, and the Scottish Government have given us leeway today should we wish to forward this response to them.
Social Work Service has already submitted a response in terms of the social work views, and this proposed response is from the local authority, and it was completed by Judex Paul, who's here. So it's whether members feel that the submission from Social Work Service is sufficient, or whether they'd like to consider the council's proposal, and I didn't receive it till Friday.
It's really up to members. If members want to see it, have copies prepared. If they're happy to have it sent with your endorsement, I'm happy to do that. If you want to decline the opportunity, happy to accept that as well. Stephen?
Chair, I'd quite like to see it, if that's okay.
Members want to see it. Can you distribute it, please, Marion? Do members want a 10-minute break to study the document, and we will resume at 4:10? Or do you want a quarter of an hour? 15 minutes, 4:15. Thanks, members. Forward, or members want to discuss it, or do members want to take the view that council already responded and the further correspondence? And I'm happy with the members' views. If there's no view, send it up to this another response from Galloway Council. I'm happy to take members' views on this. Jane?
Well, having sort of just I've only got through about 2/3 of it. What are we sending up? What are we sending up? Are we sending up the whole report? Are we sending up the conclusions? What bit are we going to send up and tell them?
I've invited this young man to come to the table, Mr. Judex Paul. He will tell you why he presented this to us. He might not explain why it's late, which isn't helpful, but he'll explain to you what he's hoping to achieve and why it's here before us today.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I should really explain why it's late. But I certainly want to disclaim any liability on my part, because my report has been sent some time ago. So I'm rather disappointed that you received my report. My report was received on Friday, as I understand it. But that report has been there for some time, and judging by the closing date of the consultation, which was yesterday, the 14th of December, I was prompted then to discuss with the Scottish Government about an extension in response, which has been agreed. They do understand that the committee needs to consider what is being proposed and also to approve the response given by the Council to that consultation. A similar process has been gone through the 31 authorities. I do have it on record that the Scottish Government will be prepared, they are prepared to await, to receive responses by the end of this week. A discussion this morning, I understand they've only had 5 responses. So it says something about that. So my apology, obviously you've received this late.
I think, Judex, maybe it would be helpful. Have you looked at the Social Work Service's response to the document?
Yes, indeed, Chair.
And does yours differ in any way from that, or is it the 5 responses that it differs in?
It doesn't, Chair, because I always take the view of the 32 authorities, the ADSW, the Association of Directors Social Work Group, and our response mirrors the response that has been submitted on behalf of that group to the Scottish Government.
Okay, does that help members in their deliberations? Councillor McKay.
Well, if I can just be my usual cynical self and reading what I've read, it's going down the same road as the children's panel. It's a way of centralising things, and we will have no control over it. And whether we put any comment in or no, unless it suits them, it will be totally ignored. So I've not got a problem with being sent in as it is.
Fine, we're not discussing whether it's centralised or not, just whether or not we send forward this document. Jane?
Well, I have a certain sympathy, actually, because, I mean, it's you do get very contentious complaints. I mean, and very, very lengthy complaints. They do go on. And I can see that we would have staff trailing up and down to the central belt, up and down and up and down, which is not a great use. I know, for argument's sake, that employment tribunals, for example, who used to meet in the Sheriff Court here in Dumfries, have now taken the opportunity, because the Sheriff Court is quote-unquote busy, to say to people in this area, no, you must come and bring your staff and sit for 2 days in an employment tribunal in the Central Belt. And I'm sorry, that's, you know, I really resent that, actually. I very much resent that. So by all means say that it's a streamlined and integrated proposal to match up with health. I think that's a good thing, but I suspect strongly that that these sorts of things ought to be heard locally. And I think the Ombudsman must take a deep breath and simply say that if he's going to expand his empire, the empire should come into the far-flung reaches of the area. So by all means, I can see there is a logic, although I'm sorry in a way that we've become so heavy-handed with the comments and complaints review panel, if it is heavy-footed, because it was very good in the beginning when people felt that they had a day in court and they expressed their opinions and they talked to people who had absolutely nothing to do with the council, and they were heard sensibly and sympathetically. Actually, very often that went away. And here, what we're doing now, I think, is we're going to create a monster, personally, over which we have no particular control, and that there is going to be a cost. There's going to be a cost in terms of actually pushing something into a system which is over-bureaucratic and is over-complicated and is not heard locally. People then have to trail up to Central Belt. I actually don't like it very much. So I think the more I think about it, the more resistant I feel to what is being proposed here, unless it is done in our region.
With these few words, Jane, are you prepared to allow the document to go forward?
Could it reflect that opinion? If other people believe the same way, if other people feel that, it sounds to me as Councillor McKee does.
One of the problems we're experienced, of course, is that, and that's why I made the comment at the outset, we're being given 15 minutes to decide whether or no this reflects the feelings of the Social Work Service Committee. And I'm pleased it's no Judici's fault, but for some bizarre reason, it's arrived at our table, if you like, at the 11th hour. I'll have a couple of more views from members, and we just have to decide, because we're not having this gentleman hanging about all night, and he's really only looking for a bit of support for a document. Well, one more speaker, and then we'll let Ted go. Ian.
Thanks. Just in as far as, well, on the basis, I mean, I think Jane's brought up a good point and Jock before us. So, Judex, I've not read all your reply. There's the 5 points I think you referred to earlier in Appendix 2. Does that reflect what Jane's saying?
I'm happy to give you the assurance, Chair, that it does reflect that. And also the points that you've made, the concerns you've raised about how the Ombudsman intends to translate the role of the Complaints Review Panel is still unknown. What we do know is that certainly, I think, from the benefits of the complainants themselves, yeah, there are benefits in terms of the shortening of the journey of the complaints, because currently for social work, it may take about 100 days and more sometimes to get a resolution on some issue, because it's just by virtue of the timescales that's laid out in the regulations for complaints review panels. Now, there's no reason to say that this is going to be any shorter, any quicker, by the Ombudsman's doing it. The main concerns is from the ADSW from authorities, and those concerns have been reflected in the responses to the ombudsman, to the consultation, is the fact that we hope that the ombudsman will provide a right of representation, will meet the complainants, will meet the two parties involved. But we don't know. There is no certainty about whether this is how the ombudsman will actually operate the system. It'll probably be more the same as they do now for other complaints, remotely reviewing the complaints. We don't know that. That's the uncertainty about it. But we have reflected concerns and asked for more information about it in terms of how the ombudsman intends to operate the new system.
Thank you. Given it that's an assurance that's been reflected, can we just agree this document goes forward? Members happy with that?
I would agree with that, Chair, but when do we see something coming back? Because there's still a lot to be worked out. I mean, I think, no, it's important. I would think the next reply will be even more important than this one.
We've no control of that. I think what we'll try and do is that every time there's a consultation document, we'll try and get it as soon as we can. It'll give time to study it properly, debate it, and a time that will allow us to formulate a response rather than be rushed into decision, although happy that Judix's view reflects the view of the committee anyway. So if you're happy with that, thank you very much for that. That will be sent, Judix. He will support that. Thank you for your attendance today, and I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.